it's lit.
All right, guys, welcome back to Relatively Conscious. My name is Tony Brown.
Irvin Bryant.
Shout out to the DJ for making our beat.
At DW Made That on social media.
And follow us on social media.
At Kinda Woke on Instagram and Twitter. Relatively Conscious everywhere else. Go ahead and like, subscribe, follow, share. Go tell it on the mountain because the stimulus checks is on the way. So, what's it called? Joe is making good on his word. We already got a piece of the 2000, so don't expect it to be a whole 2K, two stacks. But Congress voted. It's a part of a larger package, but we're going to focus on, for right now, the stimulus check, because there's an interesting set of arguments coming around on the effectiveness and what this means for public policy going forward. So you got to understand, first things first, they're coming out. There's particulars on who gets one, whether or not there's a child credit, so how many dependents you have, if you got children over 17 years old. Pretty standard run-of-the-mill stuff. But what's key in understanding this is that this bill is coupled with what was termed a liberal wish list, right? A wish list for Democrats, where it comes with a bunch of extra stuff that Republicans didn't want. And of course, because there is the trifecta, because there is a Democratic majority, it was forced through. And so now we got a situation where we're getting what we want. Stimmy is coming. Joe Biden promises excellent. Pandemic is coming to an end. 2021 is looking up. Very happy. But for Republicans, it is a nightmare.
So what's on the wish list that they have? What do they say is on the wish list?
Offer up the amount of money. $14,000 is too much. We're not giving that to poor people, straight up. They're not feeling it. Then there's changes to new policies around pensions and unemployment. And so there's all sorts of new social safety nets when it comes to hard times, when it comes to failings of capitalism, when the market fails you and you're looking down bad. Democrats are jumping out and saying, whoa, we got you. Okay. And this leads us to the next thing. So this is kind of a moot point, right? Like stimmies, it's all, we wanted the stimulus check. The money's coming to you or it's not. Varying amounts, but, do you make over 75K? I don't. So yeah, give me my money, Joe. The wild part is articulated in this article, and it's not widely talked about, but I did hear about it on the Wall Street Journal, the Journal podcast. And then a similar, the argument is rather detailed out here. How UBI, introduced and popularized by Andrew Yang in the recent election, is now being linked to the stimulus check. Now, Antonius Brown, I know you're a critic of the UBI and the Yang gang.
Yes.
What's the issue? Why can't give me money every so often and I just live off of that?
Yeah, well, okay, so the UBI they're talking about is a tax child credit. It would send, I want to say, somewhere around $3,000 to families per child that they have. Of course, there's income cutoffs, so you make over a certain amount, you're not going to get that. And there are 2 points to look at it. One is it encourages families to grow, to have kids. Our birth rate, I hate to say it like that because that just sounds so weird.
It's super weird.
But we're not growing organically as much as we used to. Basically, we're not having as many babies as we used to. Most of our growth comes from immigration, and people aren't having kids because it costs us too much money to have kids. And so they're like, well, we gave you a $3,000 a month check for each child you have. That should cover what you need to take care of the child, right? And that's the kind of sort of beginning frameworks of UBI. My problem with UBI is a capitalist argument, and it's an argument I know many people won't like to hear, right? When Republicans say, well, if you're not going to starve, then you'll get lazy, right? I know people really reject that type of argument, but there is a economic actual theory that in countries where they have UBI, innovation is much less. And so people don't take the risk to go into their own business or do their own things as much because they have UBI. And you would think having UBI would make you more risk prone because I have money coming in from the government, I should be willing to spend that money more often to do investments. But what really causes people to be more risk prone is the fact that I may starve if I don't figure something out. The reason most people join MLMs, multi-level marketing schemes like Plexus, other things like that, is because,
A
well,
pyramid scheme.
pyramid schemes, yeah. I may starve, so I got to figure out how to be my own boss somehow. And it's like you kind of get sucked into that. And so UBI and many other places tends to have a correlation with higher unemployment and especially way higher youth unemployment than normal. So those are some of the critics to UBI. Also, I don't know how much people are going to be willing to spend that much money on UBI, a tax child credit, right? So when they see how much of a hit it's going to be, and it's not coronavirus anymore, I think more people would probably be against the idea of continuing to give you money for your child and coronavirus not happening anymore. They're not at home all day. They're in class, not Zoom class anymore. Why do you need $3,000 not to take care of your child each month?
Well, as argued in this article, percentages of UBI have maintained now that they're not majority because, it's a wild policy to give people money on credit based on their children. Will you let me highlight this text? Yes. If we see, according to Pew Research and Gallup, we got nearly a majority, which is wild for what is, and they deny that it's a socialist policy in this article, and I think that's pretty funny. A bona fide socialist policy, right, wherein people get money based on just existing, just being here
Yeah,
in the United States, and the argument is made less on the, which is funny because your criticism is based on the welfare of the economy. And I think it delineates clearly between the worldview and perspective of the left versus the right, where this article goes through with pretty serious research all of the impacts on the personal welfare of individuals and our ability to weather storms, at like physical storms and
yeah,
theoretical storms as they come and go, and how they are economically devastating every time. We can buffet that. We can no longer suffer nearly as much as we did, and the evidence bears out that we have weathered this particular storm of the pandemic so well because of what essentially is UBI, right? This stimulus pack, the first two stimulus packages. And so, and there's an argument there, I feel you. But if it's effective here, it can be effective elsewhere. Also, when you look at other disasters, people were really left
in the cold.
In the cold. Thank you. But people were left out in the cold. And so the recession lingers. There's devastation. Blue collar workers are left without a place to go, et cetera, et cetera. So the argument that they're not making is the historical precedence that we see in the creation of the welfare state after World War II, right?
Yeah.
After the introduction of, now we're not going to do the Green New Deal. It's a clear that's a nigh impossibility, at least by my calculation. So Green New Deal is dubious, even though the Texas freeze makes a good argument for it. But the dole sticks around in different welfare programs. And this is, as proponents argue, simply an extension of existing programs to be more robust to help us do a better job. But I see you're pensive with the argument.
Yeah, and so the arguments for it, I understand the well-being arguments for it, right? So like the arguments that expanding UBI is meant to, or giving a tax child credit, the argument for it is like, well, it'll help lift kids out of poverty, right? So
absolutely,
the idea is that if you give everybody $3,000 for their kids, those who make very little money should be able to drastically increase their living standard with that amount of money, enough to take their kids out of poverty. And that's the argument I understand and I somewhat agree with, right? So the numbers do bear out that if you give everybody $3,000 who has kids, those kids who are on the bottom percent, who are living in poverty, will be raised out of poverty, right? I think the problem is, and my argument against it is that the question is, what is our goal economically as a nation, right? So do we want to be the world's number one economy, or is our goal is to have everybody living pretty well standard-wise across the board, right? So do we want to beat China, or would we rather be content like Norris countries like, Norway or Finland or Denmark,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, because the answer to that question, I think each side has a different answer to that question. I think the right would say our goal is to always outpace China and be the number one world's economy to have to go fight a world war. The left would say, I don't see what the point is to fighting China if people can't put food on their table and our food is secure. So therefore, why don't we just be Denmark and Finland with a huge military, right? The problem I see coming forth is that we have an issue of employment and desire, right? So there's always been a big area for people to be employed in the blue collar area, right? So if you want to work as a welder, as someone works with their hands, a has some type of trade, there has always been an area for you to do that. But there are only so many entry level admin jobs at all these companies. And the thing I think we have a problem with is that more people have gone to college to get an admin job of some sort than have actually gotten a skill to be tradesmen. And when you have that imbalance of, well, we need workers here, but workers don't want to go there, then you have unemployment, and it gets worse whenever there's a pandemic or a recession, right? And so if you give out the dole, those who do not want to get a job in a field that is very much hands-on, that they don't see themselves working in, being a welder, or a machinist, right? Then giving me the dole allows me to wait until I can find a job in a field that I want to do, to be more fulfilled as myself as a person. I'm gonna say, does the government actually care about you being fulfilled, or does it care more about jobs being filled? Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Interesting question. So that brings up two arguments made in this article. One, I'm gonna go back to the beginning, or I'm gonna go
Yeah.
down the flow, as the debaters say. They straight up address the typical conservative argument against UBI or any kind of dole, wherein, oh no, they're just gonna use the money on frivolous stuff. And an organization called SEED, it's an acronym, um, found that when they gave out, and this is not in the United States,
Yeah.
uh, $500 to their test group on a regular basis, 37% of the money was spent on food, 22% was spent in the market, and none of the money was spent on drugs and alcohol. Less than 1% was spent on recreation. And the anecdote that they pulled to substantiate or to accent this information was given a man who basically uh, did what you said just now. He's like, okay, so I'm working multiple jobs, blue collar here and there, and I wanted to get into computer science, but I needed the stability to get on these job interviews and get the training that I needed to get that upgrade. Now, if we're talking about whether or not we want to be fulfilled as a country, do we want to be like the North countries? Do we want to be predominant in the world? The argument for UBI argues that this is how we become predominant in the world. So when you talk about all these job vacancies, when we have an expanding population,
Yes.
not drastically, but it is, we have a constant influx of migrants from the South, from Latin America. We have migrants coming in from Asia, from Africa, of varying levels of skill. And we, those proponents of UBI are proponents of opening our borders more to these workers. And so if we have a constant influx of workers, varying levels of skill, often immigrants are working low skill labor, like the jobs can be filled, and they are being filled. Conservatives often complain about them being filled this way, but it's definitely possible, if not plausible. Two, conservatives have no problem outsourcing these jobs. They act like they don't have a problem with it, but
Yeah.
or they act like they have a problem with it. But based on their corporate welfare policies and a laissez-faire approach to regulation, they don't care about that kind of thing, and it's going to get taken care of. The jobs will be done. And so when we provide for more opportunity for people to get training, to have stability where they can, if I didn't go to college, I have the opportunity to do that, technical school, whatever. We have more skilled labor, more technical labor that can be on a managerial level. Our economy then grows to the degree that we are producing at a higher level because we have more secondary uh, economic activity, right? So primary being manufacturing, secondary being administrative, tertiary being like the higher level where you're, corporate.
Yes.
And we've built ourselves nearly out of primary, but we're kind of holding on to it. Logical, that's the means of production. You want to maintain some kind of control over the lowest level so you don't get priced out, et cetera, et cetera. We get screwed by OPEC all the time. We don't want that with the other industries. And China does, kind of did pull a little juke move on us with the Trump administration. But on the other hand, if we're to stay the richest, we want to be able to better weather economic disasters. It only makes sense that we evolve as we had in the previous century.
Yeah, and so my argument is always that unemployment benefits should be automatically triggered once employment goes down to a certain level. Now, of course, there's an issue with how we measure unemployment. There's a whole other discussion. But unemployment should be benefits should be kicked in automatically, right? They are not. The bill has to be passed every time to extend unemployment benefits. Most states have bad unemployment systems on purpose. So, like Florida has a bad system, and they want it to be that way, basically.
Yes.
So,
it's a bureaucratic nightmare.
Yeah, and Rick Santorum, that's his name.
No, it's not. Rick Scott.
Rick Scott wanted to be a bad system. He ran on that. I want it to be hard for you to find.
I will remove. He said he will lower the amount of people on unemployment.
Yeah,
and he did so to the degree that it was people weren't able to access it. It's not that less people needed it. It's just like you just cut people off.
Yeah, and so there's the argument that if you give people a certain amount of money, they'll use it on food and shelter and paying off debts. That is also true. It does stimulate the economy some when they do that. And that's what we kind of want them to do. The other argument, though, is that we want them to be innovative, not just consuming, right? And so does giving somebody a dole, does it make them more consumers or does it make them more creators? Does that make sense?
I think as evidenced now, there's a limited amount of research here.
Very little.
I think as evidenced by those who use government assistance, and we do this all the time, by the way, and that's I think it's a useful argument where this is the expansion of an existing system because we do have like all these different type of grants for like Pell grants, right?
Right.
You make it if your income is low enough, the government will help you go to school, and so we have all these different programs of that ilk, and people do use them to move themselves higher in the corporate socioeconomic ladder, and then that doesn't make you an innovator, right? That doesn't make you Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But overall, if we are all looking to produce more, we're still capitalistic. America still is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I have to earn. I have to outpace, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how that destroys competition. I think that argument, at least logically, I'm not an economist. It's not my forte. It doesn't really hold up or make sense to me that it would destroy, the competitive, innovative drive that we see in the status quo. Like that, I don't know how that destroys Elon Musk. He still wants to operate in America.
Yeah, and so I think the argument is also not very strong. I don't think the argument that it destroys innovation. The idea that giving people the dole will stop competition, I don't believe is true. If anything, it'll increase competition in certain areas, right? So maybe among streaming services, it'll increase competition. Among stock trading apps, it'll increase competition, right? And this is why I'm not so much worried about the UBI
tax credit.
Tax credit for children. I'm not too much worried about it because I don't think it's going to have too much of a negative impact because of how scaled down it is, right? Does it mean that workers will leave jobs that they barely hold on to anyway, that are very inefficient at because they don't want to be there? Probably so, but that's because you're probably going to find someone else to do that job also.
That's me.
Yeah, but
I'm on my way out.
The question is also though, will you have more people just staying at a job and not being efficient because they've got money, at home, and so therefore I'm gonna keep the job I have, but I'm not gonna do it very well because I have monthly income coming in, and I don't know. I don't think we don't have enough data to really get into the thick and thin what people in America would do if you gave them money each month. I do believe, though, at the end of the day, it's going to raise kids out of poverty, and that's never a bad thing, right? Um, there's economic arguments against doing it, but I'm not going to make a strong argument when it's raising kids out of poverty because that in of itself is a good goal to reach for, right? Also, if the government wants innovation, they have to invest in innovation, right? So if you want to do this correctly, I think the best way to do this would be to not only give people money every month, but also drastically spend more on apprenticeship programs, right? Drastically spend more on community colleges and things like that. So people can go find the skills that they want and take the time to do that. And the thing I want to talk about the most is how Black people are going to fare in this. I think these checks are going to be very much. We've seen a decrease in the amount of debt that Black people have because of these stimulus checks and how much we stimulate the economy. The question always goes into again 5 years from now, then what happens when inflation kicks in, when your job refuses to increase your wages, right? So if you have UBI, why do they need to pay you more than $7 an hour?
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you got UBI, then you can go ahead and work this job $7 an hour, right?
Well, it is paired with an increase, gradual in minimum wage, and that's the whole wish list and the kind of the overhaul. That's why I kind of see this as like the beginning of a new welfare state because, I mean, it's like it's really wild that this legislation is passed because
but
there's a lot there.
The minimum wage part didn't pass. That part got kicked out the bill. So they're going to still do the income tax credit and everything else, but they're not going to do the minimum wage part because they couldn't pass the reconciliation and they don't have 65 votes in the Senate to get minimum wage passed. So what's going to happen is that every person who has a child is going to get $3,000 extra in their pocket, but your job's going to be like, well, since you have an extra $3,000 in your pocket every month, I don't need to increase your wages, right?
But so I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I've also heard certain states have reconsidered on their maintenance of a really low minimum wage. Now Texas is not one of those places because we're special. I want to say it was Utah and Iowa who said something like $10, right? Yeah. So it's a compromise, not where some people want it to be, but also that $15 number comes from New York, so maybe it's unnecessary.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, minimum wage standards, as they should, because they haven't changed in so long, are changing. It doesn't seem like the stimulus or the dole, if it could be that the UBI would create economic ruin of lowering wages. I see that makes perfect sense, like on the employer's part, and that would defeat the purpose of it. But if the government could regulate, even state government regulate its way out of it, then, because we all do want to see the benefits. Like, if this is the law of the land, then we kind of want to see it work because then, prosperity is good.
And so I think my last point is going to be is that we have to wait and see. I do believe it's going to raise kids out of poverty. That's going to be a net good. But we have to see what happens with the jobs because most of these companies are already hurting from COVID. I'm talking about mom and pop shops, your local restaurants, your local gas stations, your local, those places are hurting because of the COVID crisis. Not so much your big organizations like Amazon, they're doing just fine. And so can those smaller companies, would they increase their wages to be more competitive or would they keep it the same because I know when people have money coming in from somewhere else? That's sort of the question. And I don't know how to. I think it's to be determined and to be seen exactly how that works. And we don't have very much data on this outside of the United States of America, and we think of things very differently than Nordic countries or EU countries, right? What I see happening the most, the most likely problem with this is how much it's going to add to the deficit. And of course, we've always said, after Obama, in 2014, after Obama in 2012, won a second term, and then once Trump came into office, when Obama's last term, they were talking about the deficit. Trump comes into office, the deficit increased because of tax cuts, because of trade wars, all these other things, right? And so, do we actually care about the deficit, or just something to say so we don't give poor people money? That's the question to ask the Republican Party when they take a truth term, because I don't know what exactly they believe to be true.
But I do think it's beyond the rhetoric. It is
Yeah,
actually something that we should care about a little bit. Like, it sucks that we can lose actual issues behind the fickle convictions of a politician, but us as the populace should actually care a little bit, because running, like, you can only run a deficit to a certain degree, and borrowing money, like, isn't exactly the best possible thing, even though we're literally running the world by the barrel of a gun.
yeah,
you
basically.
only do that stuff for so long.
Yeah, and also I would have preferred the money came in form of grants given to people starting businesses in low economic activity areas, right? So if you want to start a business in the fofo acres home, I want to give you a bunch of money to do that every month, basically. That's something we should have done instead of giving a tax, instead of doing some of the UBI stuff we've been doing. The stimulus checks have just made people have more money in their pocket during the coronavirus, which has made it a little bit easier. But if you're on a bottom 10% of income, then even the stimulus checks you got still wasn't enough, because some people are still facing evictions, because that $600 was probably somebody's rent. That's
I mean,
it.
that was the conservative amount, though. I mean, Joe
Yeah,
Biden is coming now with the rest of the 2K, and essentially apologizing for the Trump era
yeah,
stimulus package, which was helpful and necessary, but not what the new liberal administration would want.
yeah.
But
And I also, it's to be seen what businesses do, because businesses
yeah,
have a tend to mess people over just because they can, right?
capitalism.
Yeah, so I don't have to keep wages low and stagnant, but if I can and I can justify it, then I will.
Yeah, because I
So
gotta keep my project profit margin wide.
yeah, so when I keep profit margin wide, if I'm Amazon, I could pay you $17 an hour, but since you're getting that money, some places Amazon does pay $17 an hour.
No, I'm just saying, like, why would, yeah, Uncle
Yeah,
Sam is paying you. Why would I do that?
yeah. Why would I pay you $10 an hour when Uncle pays you some money? Uncle Sam pays you some money, so therefore you can get this 10, you can get this 11, this 12. But don't come to me asking for anything else. Don't give your hand out. I'm gonna smack that away. Um, do we get paid family leave now because of this? I don't know. Because a lot of companies have been dragging their feet on that, and this gives them an out. Why didn't give you paid family leave when you get $3,000 from the government for your child?
Oh,
You know,
interesting take.
why not do these other things when you can get this money from the government? Cut off this, cut off that, cut off this. Shut off these other vows, because now you're getting money from the government. I don't want to do it to you. I don't want to give you that in the first place, but I got a real good excuse not to give it to you.
Yeah, because you got a government benefit. But
Yeah,
I mean, maybe it's a solution in that direction, right? It's like,
yeah,
I knew I wasn't gonna get y'all, the lobbying, corruption, apparatus in Washington won't let me force you to give paid family leave.
yeah,
So we're just gonna get around that universal basic income, and that's going to, I mean, that alleviates. The debt's going to be huge. Taxation's got to go up, but that does alleviate a lot of our problems when it comes to income, social security, pensions, et cetera, et cetera.
um, also, I think that once tax credit for kids gets implemented and people start seeing those checks every month, it's not going to get repealed. Kind of like Obamacare.
No.
Yeah,
It's kind of like Obamacare. Yeah.
yeah, they're gonna talk mad stuff about it. They're gonna say all types of things about it. People are lazy. There's this or that and another, but they're gonna want their check from the government for their kids, right?
So at the end of the day, this stimulus check package opens up a whole new can of worms. It's a whole new world. No Aladdin, and the game has changed.
Yeah, and so I guess our question is, do you think the stimulus checks will have a? Well, you think the move to UBI will have a good outcome in the long run or a bad outcome in the long run? Has Andrew Yang's dream going to actually help us get to the promised land?
Also, what you gonna spend your stimulus check on? I got my eye on some art.
I got my eyes on a vinyl.
I'm dead.
That Connor Ray Bailey vinyl, man.
Corinne Bailey Ray, yes. Okay,
Yes.
she fired. Here's a problem. And actually, that might appreciate. So that's a solid investment. A solid investment.
$200.
I have a lot of records already, and I'm like, say a brother wants some. I'm trying to get on Jay-Z.
Yeah, it's $200, and that means it's only gonna go up in price. Apparently, whatever it was a limited release, and so the vinyls are right now.
It's an early 2000s or mid 2000s, 2005 record.
Yeah,
it's not a lot of vinyl pressed back in the day. So,
so therefore, it's pretty rare. It's a limited supply, and just switching people's hands. I'm gonna go ahead and get that and never play it. And
oh, dude, unless you screw it, like unless you just like, destroying it.
Yeah, I mean, do I want to rip this? Do I want to rip the shrink wrap?
They got it in mint.
Yeah, the mint conditions are the one. That's all you have is mint conditions. Mint condition, $200, $250.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This has been Relatively Conscious.
I'm Antonio Brown.
Irvin Bryant.
Peace.
Do it to him, D.